This is a Coax interview brought to you by Louder Than 10, the school for people who manage digital projects. We're building a community for freelancers, digital PMs, and creative teams by sharing stories about the experiences that tie us together. You can find us on louderthan10.com, on Twitter at louderthan10, or on Facebook. Well, hello, everybody. We are here today with James Costa. He's the founder and creative director at Fuse, which is a remote digital agency that hails all across the globe. Hi, James. How are you?
Great. How you doing?
I'm doing actually pretty good.
Pretty good?
Actually pretty good. I'm more than excited to talk to you today, which is good because yesterday I was like, I don't know how excited I'm going to be to talk to James today.
Wow.
I'm going to be extra excited. You know, you got to make sure you got the convos right, and you got to make sure the feelings right. So thank you for setting up such a positive atmosphere for us to really engage today.
Thank you for having me.
How are you feeling today?
I've got beer, which I'm not allowed to show because they're not sponsoring, so we can't. Oh, are we allowed to? Yes.
Well, I'm covering my, because
I showed it though. Uh-oh.
Well, they're not sponsoring, but you know what? If Palm Bay wants to sponsor this podcast, and what do you have there?
Steam Whistle, Toronto-based.
We're always open to taking sponsorships. Great conversation. So cheers. All right, James, tell the people, you work at this completely remote agency.
Mm-hmm.
When did you talk about when you started Fuse, and a little bit about the background on where you are and why you are who you are right now?
Yeah, so I was born. No, kidding. So
that's a long story.
That's a little bit longer. So Fuse has been around for just about 6 or almost 7 years now. We're a remote team that focuses on building digital products for our customers, and we have 14 people right now spread across Canada, the US, the UK, and South Africa. We have clients around the world as well. So where that started was me doing this as a hobby. This was always something that I really enjoyed doing, working on the web, creating things for the web. And over time, I found that the clients that I had around me weren't just friends and family anymore. They started becoming, friends of friends, and project budgets started becoming larger. And because of that, the needs of each project grew, and so it wasn't just something that I could handle anymore. So it went from being something freelance, and I think a lot of freelancers who have, or agency owners will have a similar experience where it's, you start doing something that you truly love, and then it ends up turning into this other thing, and you're like, whoa, what is this? And so 6 years, I'm still confused, but whatever, we're here, and we're really I'm grateful for the team, and not only the team, but the clients that we have. So all sorts of fun projects.
So, okay, so you're telling me you've got this solid agency, and I remember you saying that you started designing and coding when you were 7 years old.
Yes, yeah. So my brother was an illustrator in the 90s. This will age me a little. Well, not age me, but tell a bit about my age. But that being said, he started in the 90s doing a lot of illustration, and one of the things that he would do is bring me into the office that he worked at a lot. And the people who were there would think that it was super cool on my days off of school and stuff to teach this little kid how to code and whatnot. So I remember sitting at a desk learning about, at that point I was learning about front page and stuff. This is not anything sophisticated, guys. I was 7, come on. So I was learning about how to create using digital interfaces and stuff, and it was a lot of fun. And over time I just kept doing it. And I think I was 13 when I got my first paid project. It was $100. It was huge for a 13-year-old, by the way. $100 is I could do that with it.
I bet you could. What was that project?
It's still up, actually. I think it's lunasbeads.com if anyone wants to visit it. I think that was the one. Yeah, I believe so. It's still up. It's I've grown into as a designer since then. I'd like to think, hopefully. Although we have an amazing team now, so they're way better than I am. But that being said, it is still live pretty well.
I'm gonna have to post that link, Luna's Beads. I like that. It's kind of the Hall of Fame, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty interesting. I'm still in touch with the owner's daughter, and she's fantastic. So I mean it's great. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Okay, so you have your own son, and he's
Yes.
6 years old. He's going to be 7 soon. Obviously, Kay, looking at the history now, you started coding and signing when you were 7. How important is it to you to teach these kinds of skills to your kids?
I think it's important because the reality is right now our school system isn't set up to be able to handle and teach kids about these sorts of things, and getting them into technology early is important. So whatever technology that is, and just showing kids what they can do with it is something that allows them to open a lot of doors in the future. So right now, he definitely comes around with me and learns about things like 3D printing and robotics and stuff.
Really?
But also, things like developing and how that goes and how designing sites goes. Although his big thing is that he wants to work with Fuse, and that's like his big. He wants to apply for a position and like get in and stuff, and then like run the company. I don't know what he wants
Send
to
your
do.
resume. Yeah.
Yeah, no big deal. Just a 6-year-old. But yeah, so I think it's extremely important, and there are a lot of great organizations that are doing things to get kids into coding and into technology in general. I think attending those events, us as adults being able to attend those events as mentors or help run those events. I think that's something that we can pass the torch to the next generation. I think it's extremely important.
Well, so when you said that, it kind of jogged two things for me. So the first thing is it's pretty incredible that you have a son that's so pumped on what you're doing that he's already decided at 7 that he wants to follow in his dad's footsteps. Because I don't know if you've ever seen this documentary. It's called 7 Up. It was filmed in the 1950s, and it was about kids in England at the time and how your personality starts to get firmed up by the time
Yeah.
you're 7, right? So you already, as a person, kind of know who you are, not maybe what you want, but pretty fascinating thing. So that's the first point. And then I think the second point is like, I went to school as a teacher, as a high school English teacher. And one of the things I found kind of hilarious is that we had what they were called ICT outcomes. And those were basically our technology outcomes. And so they were this tiny little pocket of, this is how you're going to throw technology into the lessons that you teach, but definitely nothing around, this is the core source of what we need kids to be learning today. So it was an afterthought, and it was very scary to a lot of teachers to be like, how do I use the whiteboard?
Yeah. Well, that's
kind
the
of stuff,
problem,
right?
is that it's not so much only about the system, but it has a lot to do with the system, not only in the curriculum, but also in preparing teachers to be able to teach students about these things, or engage with the different technology that's available to them. And then also obviously making that technology available to them. But it starts with simple things. It doesn't mean, kids by the age of 7. I mean, at the age of 7, I didn't know how to code a website, but I was starting to learn how to do things on the web, learning about, what it takes to actually build a website, what steps I would have to take. So I think that engaging kids in any sort of technology is important. And the more doors that we can open for them, the more that, the more creative technology concepts are going to become out. I mean, you look at a lot of companies that are starting or have been getting investment funding and stuff like that, although there's too many to count at this point. But that being said, a lot of them are young, and it makes a lot of sense. They come with a creative, completely different way of looking at things. And they want to change the world that they belong in. And I think if we continue inspiring the next generation to want to, or to aspire to those kind of things, I think we're gonna have a really bright future ahead of us.
Yeah, I think that the entire education system is going to have a major shakeup, because I walked away like probably 7 years ago because it was still so bureaucratic. It was still so brick walled, prison system, kids sitting down and not getting a chance to do things their way. They didn't have, even though they had an iPad or a phone, it was like, that's dangerous and you need to put that away, and you're not allowed to use that in class. So that resonates with me. I could spend probably 6 hours and get drunk with you talking about the education system and all the things that we could do to improve technology and problem-based learning to get kids thinking that way. But we don't have 6 hours. So what I wanted to say is that, so you, as a father, you were a single father, and you also were raising your kid while you were running an agency. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So when my son was born, or just before my son was born, I started Fuse, and it had a different name, and it was doing a few different things. I was working at other companies, but this was the thing that I was coming home to. So even though I was working, whether it was doing telemarketing or Pizza Hut. It was probably one of my favorite post or pre-Fuse jobs. I was working at Pizza Hut. I worked in the back. I even had like the net cap thing. It was great. But anyways, so if anyone in North York, Ontario got the wrong pizza, is probably me. Anyways, so with doing all those things, this is the thing I was coming home to, and I had clients that came to me through referrals and friends, and it was starting to grow up in and of itself. And then had Caleb, and at the point of getting him full time, it was I had to make a lot of decisions in my life about what I was going to be doing, and it was a lot of serious decisions for someone to make it at such a young age, in looking at hindsight. Mm-hmm. And the decision I made was that the clients that I had, this thing that I loved doing on the side, I want to invest my whole self into it, because I didn't think that, if I didn't put my whole self into the thing that I was trying to build, just kind of haphazardly on the side, then nothing would come out of it. And again, it wasn't intended on being this huge business or anything, but I fully jumped into it. And the business to this day really does reflect the flexibility. The environment reflects the flexibility that I needed as a single father, and the availability that I had towards the position. So we have a lot of parents who work with Fuse, and they all kind of share those same sentiments about, the fact that we work 30-hour weeks, we have flexible schedules, there's no 9 to 5, everyone works remotely, so they kind of can continue being a part of their family's lives and not being this kind of like toxic 60 to 80-hour work week that a lot of larger agencies will push on people. And it's been fantastic, but it was definitely tough the first little while, just trying to figure out how it worked. And it took a lot of people around me to continue pushing me and motivating me, inspiring me to do what I'm ultimately doing today, and what we as Fuse are ultimately doing today. But there were a lot of days where I was taking calls. I would schedule calls. Like I would only have like a couple hours of calls during the day, and I have a few hours at night, because he would have nap time. And he wasn't at daycare, so he was actually full-time at home. And because he was so young, like there's a lot of crying and, poop that had to be cleaned up, and like it was crazy. So every parent who's gone through parenting will know that it's quite crazy. But definitely a lot of flexibility needed to be had. And that's why I'm very grateful for the clients that we had, especially initially, who put up with that and had patience for some of the stuff that I had to go into starting Fuse, and it's been incredible. So today we've got a really great team, and they all are adults, so we get to respect their schedule. They respect our clients and the work that we're doing, and it's worked out fantastic.
So you really, you put the clincher on this whole idea of putting your heart into your business, because I know a lot of people who are freelancing and they're like, I want to start an agency, what are the things I need to know in order to start an agency? And I feel like they are more focused on, how do I get the work? How do I get the clients? And I feel like maybe some of them are missing the point that you have to start your business on an idea. And your idea was that those people you worked with had to connect with the fact that real life means it's messy, and there's people you have to look after, and people you deeply, deeply care about, and other people around you have to understand and fit into that. And I think that's pretty incredible. Like, what would you tell somebody that wanted to start their own agency? Like if they were sort of, younger and they were looking at starting something, what would be the thing that you could say to them that maybe would be different than what all those other guys would say?
I would say don't lose sight. It's hard to when you get down to it, because like you said, like a lot of people end up focusing on like, oh, where am I getting business, and how am I going to invoice, and how am I going to do this, how am I going to do that. Those things are really important. I don't think that you should put those by the wayside, but I think that a lot of the times as a business owner, you start to think about, okay, what's in the bank, and is what's in the bank enough to pay for all these people that I've now hired, or is this enough to pay even for myself if you're a company of one at the time. And ultimately, in those moments, that's when it's most important to think, why am I doing this? Is this something that I enjoy doing? What is the end goal? And focus on that end goal so that you can you can be happy as you're building this and you can enjoy that ride. Because, it even 6 years later, there are still bumps. There are still things that come up. There's still things that are stressful. There's still things that, make me wonder, okay, cool. Is this something that is still true to myself? And I think it's important for us to keep having those gut checks so that we stay true to ourselves. But you can never lose sight of what you want to do, of what you love. And the second that you do, you have to look at what you're doing and realign it with things that you love. So I truly think that people who are passionate about what they do can really do a lot of things with that passion. But it takes that confidence in self, that ability to continue looking ahead and looking at what the goals are and why you're doing what you are to really succeed. So if I was to tell anyone what to do, just don't lose sight.
Gut checks. I love that. Actually, I think that's solid. So what would you say had been the biggest takeaway that you made as an independent business owner, a digital agency owner? Because it's not easy. Freelancing isn't easy, let alone owning your whole business, hiring people. What is the thing that you learned?
Oh man, I think well, there's a lot of things that I'm still learning, and a lot of the things that I've still already learned, I continue to learn more about to today. So the whole idea of running a business isn't such that within the first year, first 5 years or whatever, everything. Even the most established entrepreneurs, CEOs, owners will still say that they learn something new all the time with their businesses. So for me, I think the biggest takeaway has been that it's okay to give up a little bit of what you're doing. And a lot of that has to do with ego. And I talk about ego a lot because for me, ego is the difference between letting someone else do something and not being able to run a business. Because the second that you give up your ego, the second that you give up, as a freelancer, the idea that it's only you who can do all the work within the business, or it's only you who can provide the most quality service, that's when you allow yourself to focus on the business as opposed to being in the business. And you can do things like, for me, one of the biggest takeaways, and just to kind of relate it to a lot of the work that you're doing, is project management. Like for me, it took me a while to be able to give up the idea of selling a project and then kind of taking a little bit of a step back to say, we have a team that I've put together that I trust to run through this project. And I have a project manager in place that is going to make sure that it's successful. So for me, the takeaway is obviously giving up your ego. And then the other part of that is more tangible part of that is definitely giving up reins of the projects themselves.
Wow. And what has been like the shift of having sort of like a dedicated project manager versus running things yourself? What do you feel are the tangible differences in the approach or process?
So at the point that we originally hired a project manager, there was no operations. Operations was me at that point, if you considered, I guess I would have been considered operations. But for me, that was being able to then have a partner that I could lean on. And it was someone who could take the relationship that I had already built and continue it throughout the project, where I wasn't able to in the trenches as much, because I was obviously busy with other things that are going on. And that's understandable for any business owner. So for me, I think the biggest shift and change was a time thing. It was being able to then say, I don't have to focus on these projects. I don't have to focus on the business anymore, or be in the business anymore. I can focus on the business now. And I think that that's something that owners don't do a lot, but I think we need to do a lot more of.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point because, we're, as business owners ourselves, we understand that it's like you're going to be spending, the majority of your time in it, thick in it, and in the trenches, and it's going to be hard. But then on top of the hardness, the difficulty, and the rewards of it, of course, is the fact that you still need to have that high level view. You still need to be able to get the periscope totally out and actually make sure you're on the right path, right?
So, you're a leader ultimately, and you have these people that you've brought around you that are following you in one sense or another. Yeah. And you need to be able to say, okay, this is where we're going, or work with them to figure out where we're going, or think about be the one to think about and start those conversations, because ultimately they're focused on the work. So I think that as long as we can, as owners of businesses, keep that sight, lose our ego, and focus on delegating to others and working with the rest of the team, and trusting the hires that you ultimately bring upon the team, the more that you're going to be able to do.
I think you talked about a couple of things too that really hit me when you said that. So first of all, the ego thing, right? Obviously, I mean, that's, we talk a lot about that because I think that clouds your judgment as a leader. And I think a lot of people think that leadership is about knowing what's right and what to do all the time.
Yeah.
The fact that you said that that was a huge part of letting go. Okay, I got a little bit of a warm fuzzy when you said it was about letting somebody else be able to pick up right where you would leave off, and trusting that person to continue the work that you were doing.
Yeah.
As a project manager, I mean, that's probably one of the biggest compliments I think you could give, because I don't know how familiar you are with how, you know, many project managers kind of get treated in, say, like a more traditional digital or less digital agency. But there's, I think, a bit more of like, well, you handle the day-to-day and the scheduling the tasks, and then we're going to handle the client relationships because we're either account managers or we're VPs, or, you know, like whatever that system is. I think a lot of the time I reject that division, because I feel like the role of a really good project manager is to continue that vision. And I think some people just say potato. It's like, well, we call it a different name, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's incredible. And I wanted to kind of find out a little bit more. You talk about escalating mode versus tone, and I think that's a kind of a really neat topic, and I wanted you to kind of break that open for me.
Yeah, so it was actually something that one of the fusers that we have in the team actually mentioned as a point. It's something that's extremely important. I think what's lost in project management sometimes is the sense that project manager is customer service. Project manager is ultimately dealing with the client and having to deal with the good stuff and the bad stuff. And they're an extremely important asset to the team. But the thing is, as we know from customer service agents, sometimes it's going to be really frustrating dealing with clients. Sometimes it's going to be really frustrating dealing with, you know, the person at Starbucks who you just made a coffee for, and you gave a regular milk instead of goat milk. Oh my God, it ruined their day. And okay, well, if they're lactose intolerant or something, yes, you absolutely did ruin their day, so never mind. But that being said, it can be tough to then go to your team and have to relay points, but then not be upset. And a lot of the times you end up taking it out on the team because you have no one else to take it out on as a project manager. So I think one of the things that that I think is important for a good digital product manager is to understand that you know, you are the intermediary sometimes all the time between the customer and the team. And when times are tough, that doesn't mean that you need to make it tougher for anyone else, because you're customer service to both teams. So what that means is sometimes you need to go axe throwing to take out some of that anger, but you can't take it out on the client, you can't take it out on the team. So where we talk about escalating mode and not tone is such that sometimes over text, when we're messaging, because that's, you know, as digital project managers, you know, that's something that I won't say we do, because ultimately I don't think I've got that star yet, or that badge or that thing to put on my LinkedIn profile. Whoever using LinkedIn,
I'll endorse you.
Yeah, you'll endorse me. Yes. So I think that one of the things project managers it can be tough with is having these text-based conversations, and sometimes someone is really happy on the phone, but then over message it seems as though, you know, some messages could be perceived as like angry or frustrated or whatever else. And so one of the things that you have to keep in mind is that perception, and understand that the messages that you're writing, the way you're communicating with people, understand the constraints of that, especially with the way that you speak to people. So there's the tone part of it, but then the mode of it as well is not freaking people out by running to the last resort of getting in touch with someone before you try the steps before it. So every team has a different escalation mode. Sometimes, you know, for us, it starts in Slack, because Slack is the first place that we message each other. It's instant. And then it goes up to email, Sometimes Trello is somewhere in there because we use that as a project management tool. And then and only then does it start with some sort of either text message or phone call. But we try to reduce the amount of just picking up and calling someone in a rushed atmosphere when there's something wrong, and more so gently bringing things to people and taking steps before, going all haphazard and crazy on things. So for project managers, again, customer service, it's tough sometimes, but you have to reload those points to both teams. Don't escalate escalating the tone is definitely never the thing to do, because then you kind of push yourself away from the people that you're speaking to, and ultimately understanding the modes of conversation that you're using so that you can be more effective with using them, as well as escalate problems within those modes as effectively as possible.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a tone that's shifting, isn't there, around, that's because nonverbal communication, I mean, that's up to what, 97%? I don't know. It's so high. It's like more than any other kind of communication in person.
Yeah.
And so seeing, like I've worked a lot of remote PM jobs, and it's fascinating, like talking, I think even 3 years ago with you about this too, and just seeing how that dynamic can work very well, even though we don't get the face-to-face contact that most people assume is necessary to continue and really foster those strong client relationships. So I think the fact that you have sort of a system in place to guide the escalation, if you will, or to not even guide it, but just like give it a support, give it a net, somewhere to fall. I think that's pretty, I think that's pretty fantastic. It's pretty intuitive. So I think I was going to ask you a little bit more. You only work 30 billable hours every week. Is that for each person?
So it's 30 total hours. That's
30
it.
Total hours.
Yeah.
So that's billable, unbillable, admin, like whatever the stuff is.
Yep.
Everybody's kind of, okay. How did you, what was the sort of, when did you come to that decision? What was the background behind that?
The background behind that was a single dad. And that was the amount of time that I could put in per week. So it wasn't intended as this, like, okay, we're just going to work this many hours. And so that was such. I think one of the original reasons behind it was when we were originally making one of our first hires, or actually our first hire, we were determining how many hours a week we were going to put that person on. We needed to determine a fixed amount. And so we tried it at 30, and it was successful. And it continues to be successful today. So it was kind of just a little bit of an experiment, and it's worked really, really well because it's allowed our team to, work on projects outside of it. Sometimes they're freelancing on the side, or, sometimes they're going to events, or sometimes they're busy with family. Like, they have other things going on in their lives, and we don't want to be the people who keep them away from that stuff. We want to be the people who support those things. So that's been really successful for us, but it's been an experiment. And there have been times where it's been really, really successful. There have been times where it hasn't been so successful, but consistently it's been the best way. And when we talk to so many other people about the amount of hours that they work a week and the businesses that they work in, one of the first things people complain about with their jobs is how many hours they're working a week. And so we want to allow people to work a comfortable amount of hours so that they're not burnt out, so that they're doing their best work. And I think that's been truly successful for us. So 30-hour weeks has been great. I mean, if you think about what the reason for the 40-hour week was, I mean, it was intended so that people could, I mean, with Henry Ford, he wanted people to go home and then be able to buy cars.
Yeah.
That's what they wanted to buy, the stuff that they were building. So it just makes a lot of sense. And it's not that we expect our team to go and buy our services or anything like that. But at the same time, we want them to go and take time to breathe and learn and enjoy life, so that they don't feel like, this part of their life that they're working with us is a huge stressful one. We want them to enjoy it.
There's so much research out now, whether you're talking about creative, re-energizing, meditation, just having a break, and how that can kind of, shift all of the neurons and everything in your brain, just to get them really, on a pathway that works for what you guys are trying to accomplish together. I mean, it's honestly like no kidding, right? Like, I think the average person only works if they have an 8-hour job or 8-hour day job, they're only working between 5 to 6 productive hours anyways, right? So I think the fact that you guys are kind of cutting that, I was curious to see like how that works, because I was thinking maybe an argument someone else might make would be like, what do you mean you're cutting down to 30 hours a week? They would say, well, doesn't that mean that they're now doing even less productive work or less billable work? And I guess, can you speak to that? Like,
so I mean, as a remote team, sorry to cut you off there, but as a remote team, the hours that people are clocking are clocked hours. They're not just hours in an office. So where you get with the 5 or 6 hours being productive per day is the sense that at a 40-hour week, every day of the week, if people work 5 days, let's just say, then you have 5 hours of lunch. And then you have generally another half hour per day of just breaks that they take, whether it's smoke breaks or otherwise. And then on top of that, then you have all of the, I'm walking back to my desk and then I saw someone and they're talking about their dog, or they're talking about this, or talking about that. Our team doesn't clock for those things. Our team doesn't clock for going to the bathroom. Our team doesn't clock for going for lunch. They're clocking on actual tasks. So when you consider the amount that's actually worked at a 40-hour week, it's very close to a 30-hour week. So our hours are the productive hours of that 40-hour week. And so that's again, worked really successfully for us. Now, don't get me wrong, we still track billable versus non-billable things. Mm-hmm. So there are things that are non-billable. We have a lot of non-billable services, and we'll talk more about that, I'm sure. But we have a lot of non-billable services that are lumped into our hourly rate, and those things are still counted towards the hours that are working. It doesn't matter. We've built our business on the model of working 30 hours, and it's a cop-out to say it's just 30 billable hours.
Right. Yeah, I think that's an argument that a lot of owners or managers might use to be like, well, we want to make sure that we're really focusing and targeting your time, so be billable for 30, but also work all the other hours too.
but so that's why having goals is important, right? So we don't say to the team that they have to work 30 billable hours a week. We tell them that our goal per person is about, per billable person, because we have operations team, which are non-billable, and then we have our billable team, which are our designers and our developers. So for our billable team, we tell them to work about an 80% billable week. That's our goal. That's our goal per week. Now, sometimes we're shy of that, but that's not always their fault. That's sometimes our fault. Or sometimes they've taken off some time during the week because they needed to, go rest or recharge, or they had a family vacation or something. So sometimes that impacts things as well. But as a team, further to that, we also have our goals per week on how many hours we want to work. And that adjusts with the days off that are taken for that week, that adjusts with how many people are on the team, and that's constantly adjusting. But we know this target as a team so that we can constantly push for that. And we know what those goals at the end of the week are tied to at the end of the year. So our goal for this year, one of the goals that we have for this year is maintaining a 10% profit margin. Last year we were 5%. This year we want to be 10%. So we have goals all aligned to what 10% looks like as a company. So for the team, it's not such that sometimes they have all the control over that, because there's certain sales things that, the ups and downs and stuff. But ultimately, overall, they know what we're going towards. And when you give them that vision, that sight that I was talking about before, then they can achieve the goals. When we set the expectations with the team, then they can achieve those expectations. But if we don't set those expectations with them, then we're not going to be able to. So as business owners, I understand the concept, and business owners also generally have this stereotype of trying to get every penny out of every team member, and I understand that. But that's when you start looking at the team as dollars and numbers as opposed to people, and then you have problems with retention and stuff. So I mean, there's a lot of balance that you need to play into it. But ultimately, if you set those goals and you treat the team right, and you make them feel like there's reason that they want to achieve those goals because they are part of something larger, as we try to every day, that's where you can start seeing productivity rise, and those 30-hour weeks being extremely effective.
Right, and anything over 70% for your billable rate anyways is fantastic, right?
Yeah, I mean, but you consider that our non-billable team brings down that rate. So when we end up at the end of the week, we're probably right now, let's just be honest, we're probably between 50 and 60% per week billable. Okay. So that's technically lower than the 70% that it's supposed to be, but we run low margins. We kind of work with a lot of things non-billable, so it brings things down. but our target is actually 60%. Like if we can, as a team, hit 60% week to week, we're doing amazing. So, but that's about building your business a particular way to make that work. If your business wasn't built in that way, it's not going to work in that way. So it's a tough balance.
Well, this really brings up a hot topic for me. So I think part of what, we at Louder Than 10, we talk about a lot is making sure that project management is not considered a line item, a commodity, or something that wouldn't be billed for. Like project management is, if they're involved in business development, they are the ones scoping and estimating that increasing the value of the project. So I wanted to sort of preface this by saying I have worked at a couple agencies where a lot of my time was doing business development, and I was considered not billable. And so because I wasn't billable and doing like blogging and stuff like that, the owner of the company would often sort of give me a little bit of a, well, we need to pull your hours back this week because we can't afford you. We can't afford to keep maintaining the internal or non-billable work. And I, that made me kind of feel like I was almost causing people to, slow down, or I was a bit of a lag, or,
dead weight,
and it doesn't feel good. And so I wanted to ask you, since project management is not billable for you guys, right? How do you deal with this? Like, how do you make your team feel okay about being dead weight?
Well, they're not dead weight. We never talked to them about it.
Of course not.
so that's reality. I mean, hey, so when you look at it, I don't do any billable work either. I'm not working on design or development of projects, and ultimately the creative direction that I do on a day-to-day basis is considered non-billable also within our hourly rate. So the reality is that our operations team is non-billable, but we are doing a ton of work that increases our ability to be billable. So we take things not only off the team's hands, but we're also thinking about process. We're thinking about, cash flow, all of those things that ultimately impact how billable we are as a team. So when you start thinking about it less as like billable being, or non-billable being this like negative concept, then I think there's more success. Because, a lot of the team will talk about this as well, is, just because our marketing initiatives are non-billable, just because working on our website is non-billable, doesn't mean that it isn't important. Even though we might not be able to, at least right now, because we haven't been able to figure out the best method to, but just because we're not able to tie a specific sale to the fact that we updated our website, ultimately there is that there. And we want to make sure that we're putting as much time into ourselves as we are into our clients' projects. Now, it's not identical one-to-one, and it's not, more into ourselves than into our clients' projects, because obviously that would be tipping the boat and we'd probably flip over. But ultimately on our end, we want to respect even the people who are working those non-billable hours. But it's a tough balance too, right? I mean, every once in a while you get into a crunch with projects, and things are really tough because you don't have enough of them, and then you need people to really be focusing on billable. But it's kind of a balancing act that you need to do with the team and with your resources. I hate calling them resources, but at the same time, your team members to make sure that they are able to hit the goals that you're also forcing them to achieve. So when it comes to our team and our operations team, we really respect our operations team. And I don't say that because we're only I'm also a part of it, but our team respects our operations team. They respect the work that they're doing. They understand the work that they're doing because we make it very transparent. We work really closely with the rest of the team to make sure that, things are constantly moving forward. And since we're able to be effective team players, we are thought less of as dead weight and more of as the thing that keeps the business going. So basically what I do to show that non-billable is just as important as billable is just that. Make sure that there is no disconnect between the two, because ultimately non-billable has just as much effect in the business as the billable.
Right. It's like it's not an immediate payoff, but you're going to see the payoff, and it's going to probably have a bigger one, probably than some of the more visible things that you're doing.
Yeah, totally. And like if you consider project management just as in itself, again, customer service, then ultimately a customer satisfaction, paying for that someone to focus on that satisfaction will in the end ensure that the relationship continues forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I guess because for me, my hours would get reduced, right? Because, oh, we can't afford you. So it was like, even though, yeah, you're a valuable part of the team,
Yeah.
but also we can't pay you the same amount now because you're a liability, right?
Right.
And so that I think was more the area I was talking about. But you said you guys were thinking about trying to encourage more of the billable from the PM side. Like, what are your ideas around that? Because I know I could
Yeah.
go on, but
Oh, totally. Well, right now, project management is in itself right now a non-billable task. But ultimately, you know, we've talked about it a lot, like internally, just trying to figure out how we could make the project manager billable, so that because we do feel as though it's an extremely important part of the work that we do. It's not something that we figured out completely just yet. It's something that'll take time as well, because ultimately project management does add time to the project. But we're pretty sure that, you know, with the way that our project managers are integrated into projects at a very low touch level, not being in the way of the work being done, but supporting it. So not being the person who sits in the middle and just does broken telephone, but is the person who works with both ends as a part of the conversation. We think that there's a lot of value in that, and because of that fact, we can, and because of the fact that, you know, they're not spending all that time being that, you know, rock in the middle of two parties trying to talk, then we're going to be able to add project management as billable, but not at an extremely high percentage. We'll be able to do it at a lower percentage and still allow for our project manager to feel as though they're, you know, making the company direct money as opposed to the sometimes indirect money that they can feel that they're making. But again, we don't think about it as that. But at the same time, as a business, as us thinking about, you know, how we can continue not only achieving our goals but also exceeding our goals and setting ourselves up for future success. Billing for project management, billing for creative direction, billing for these different things that we offer is something that we want to keep thinking about and bringing back to the table.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because if you guys are going from a 5% to a 10% margin this year, you know, like one of the quickest ways is to try to kind of figure out, you know, from a project management perspective, it's like all the meetings, all of the setup, all of that high or low touch, all of the onboarding, all of that stuff. And like, you know, the reason most projects fail is because of a lack of project management or poor project management. So it's kind of like a fascinating relationship. But I think the fact that you mentioned that you guys are kind of shifting and doing that transformation, I'd love to follow up with you and to see, you know, like have things shifted. I know you have a new PM coming on board, and I want to see like how things kind of change for you guys, and if you have learned anything along the way that you think other people could learn from. Because I think your situation where you guys started out with a really, well, you start out with you, right? And then gradually adding people to the team. A lot of smaller teams look at project management as, again, it's more of a liability or a cost rather than an investment and something that can bring value to the project. So I don't see a lot of teams who have less than 8 people that get to a point where we're like, we can afford a project manager. But I think it's just looking at it as a different thing, almost like a bubble, a net around that project. And clients won't be like, how come you're charging me to, you know, like put that time in when, anyway, it's one of those things I'm super passionate about. And I know you and I are going to have some like really great conversations. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, okay. So, James, do you guys run more agile or a more like waterfall style shop? And how does that sort of impact your process and the way, like how flexible you guys are about that?
Yeah. So we're a mix of the two, like an agile and a waterfall shop. We don't take certain principles of one or the other, but we kind of mix them into something that works for us and for the way that we position ourselves as a company with our clients. So we're a product team for our clients. So we work very closely with them. We work iteratively. We're constantly looking at direction and trying to make sure that we're involving them in the process. So it's not like we're taking weeks and weeks to get them things. We're consistently sending them things so that they can feel like they're a part of something. So that's important for us in the way that we work with clients. And because of that, parts of Agile work, but parts of Agile don't work, and parts of Waterfall work, but parts don't work as well. So we use Trello as a project management tool, which allows us to have a Kanban board, which is really just amazing for us as a team to be able to have. It's an extremely flexible tool. And what it allows us to do is be flexible with our process, which is ultimately growing day to day. And, as we work with different people on the team, as we work with different clients, we learn more about that process. We learn more about what works and what doesn't. So while I see a lot of people saying that they're an agile shop or they're a scrum shop or they're this or that, and I understand why they do those things, especially when you're a larger team, ultimately, one of the best parts about us being a small team is being able to have that flexibility, not only with our clients, but with our team. And it's something that we embrace on a day-to-day basis. So while we're constantly adjusting our processes, and I would definitely say we're more agile than waterfall, ultimately, we take the best of everything that's out there, and we work towards having a process that works for us, our team, the people around the table, and our clients. And that's kind of how we work.
Yeah, I mean, it seems scary to me to sort of for a company to be like, well, we are a methodology. That is how we define ourselves.
Yeah.
I also feel the same way, like when we have people who say, well, we're a web shop, but we do WordPress. Like that's our thing. Because
for sure,
that technology doesn't exist in 10 years or something else comes along. That's happened before. So I think that's a really smart approach, and having that flexible sort of methodology is like, well, what works for the project, right?
For sure.
And I was curious, how do you guys use Trello with clients? Do clients add to the boards?
Yeah, so clients are right in there with us. We don't keep them separate. Some clients don't like Trello for one reason or another, whether they're not as tech savvy or they don't feel as though they understand what's going on, and past our coaching and stuff, it's clearly not working. So we adjust our process, but the majority of our clients work within Trello with us.
How does that work? How do you get them to make sure they're not splattering your whole board with cards that you're like, oh no, we never agreed to that. It's a scope change. What do you do?
Yeah, so some clients are a lot more comfortable with going in there and actually adding cards and stuff, and we're fine with that. We just tell them exactly where to add things, and when we see that they're adding things, we move them to the right place. It just takes some education with clients, but the majority of clients only action on something when they're mentioned or when a card is in our column for them to give feedback, which is client acceptance. So we have our workflow for Kanban is having an operations column, which is static and has cards in it that are relevant to project updates, budget updates, scheduling updates, and any other operations related tasks that need to happen on either a week-to-week basis or at whatever point during the project. Or sometimes we have a backlog column, but ultimately we have a to-do column, an in-progress column, an internal advocacy. So this is when the person who's working on a particular task brings it here and gets feedback from the rest of the team for bringing it to client acceptance. And at that point, the client is mentioned, it's brought into that column, and the client knows that anytime anything is in client acceptance, it's waiting on something from them. We don't coach them on actually moving things around as much. Some clients go ahead and do it because they understand the way that we're working in there, but we kind of give them a low-touch ability to feel as though they're a part of the process and be able to see transparently what's going on. And it's worked really well for us. But again, every client interacts with us differently. So we don't have this approach that is just like, you have to go through this approach. We are ultimately looking for client feedback to determine our direction and make sure we're working towards something larger that is part of their company and what they're looking to do. So for us, we want to make sure we're getting that feedback from them, whichever way is most comfortable, because that'll provide us the best feedback and the lowest turnaround in terms of feedback as well.
That makes sense. I like that. I'd love to talk a little bit more about that when we get a chance. And even if you were open to sharing just the list names or like the
totally.
I use Trello all the time. We hadn't been using it with clients because it was like, well, we wanted to make sure that we were onboarding them in a way where they did know where to put things. But I could see it totally being useful, and I love the fact that it's so flexible, and you can use it as a grocery list too if you need to.
Oh yeah, it's great. We use it for internal operations related things. So like our Fusers board, where it has our goals, our memos, our state of the union, our weekly team meetings are all in there. We have it for HR. We have it for applicants. Everything goes through Trello. It's been that and Slack are two like game changers for us.
Yeah, I think that they have been for a lot of folks. So I can totally relate. What do you suck at? What is like the thing that you're just like, you know what? I've been doing this for X number of years, or I just learned this thing. What are you terrible at?
Cooking? No. Although I really do. I'm not that great at cooking. But that being said, I would say one of the things that I'm realizing more and more of that I need to do is, again, take a step back from the actual projects themselves, and not in a way of taking a step back from them from being involved in them and still being part of certain things, but being a blocker sometimes. I have a crazy schedule of being, a single father, being having tons of things on the go at any given time. The last 2 days for me have been a definite testament to that. But for me, I think the team works really well when they communicate with each other and they don't feel like someone else has to be involved in the process in whatever way. And I think the more that I kind of shift myself out of that role, and the more that I'm able to just be a value add to conversations and stuff, I think that's going to be a big thing. So if I were to distill that down to the answer, or something that I should have put into one sentence as opposed to like 20, it would probably be continuing to lose the ego. It's something that I'm still working on. It's something I recommend to everyone, but it is something that takes time, and it's not something that's just like night and day switch. But you give it up slowly as you trust your team, as you work with them to determine who's doing what, and so that they know what's expected of them, so that they can continue moving forward. So that's probably my biggest weakness.
Yeah, I think that's pretty huge. I mean, I think we're all struggling with a little bit with ego, regardless of where we sit with it, how friendly we are with our own egos. And I think, I don't know, it takes a lot of courage to be okay with that, to really sort of look at yourself and think, like, I don't want to be the bottleneck, because I think so many owners are by accident, not on purpose, but because they don't want anything to get missed and they want to make sure things are okay for everybody. But yeah, really letting go and be like, what's the worst that could happen if I am not involved in this particular process?
Exactly.
So yeah, that's actually, I would say that's more brave than anything. But what are you good at?
Sorry, that's my Chewbacca impersonation.
Yeah,
I know. What am I good at? Distill it down to one thing. No, I would say the thing that I'm good at is relationships, and I'm really good at making sure that people, or I hope that I'm good at making sure people feel appreciated for their time, whether whatever involvement they have with me in a day. I think one of the I do as well. There's a movie, really bad movie, you shouldn't watch it, with Justin Timberlake. Although I love Justin Timberlake, and he is like the picture perfect man for me. Although I am engaged to lots of others. I'm gonna take myself to this.
Move along. No, yes, I'll tell him you said that.
Yes, please do. I love you, Justin Timberlake. So he was in a movie where he had this everyone, the currency was time, and time was this thing where everyone would trade time to buy services or buy goods, and it was a really bad movie. I will just remind everyone, it's a very bad movie, so please don't watch it, or watch it just with the knowledge that I didn't recommend to. But ultimately, it's very interesting that we go around life and we sometimes forget that the moments that we take with each other are taking people away from other things. And if we can respect that time with each other and show each other how much we value each other's time, I think we're going to be able to have that much more of an impact on people's lives. So while what we do as designers, developers, project managers, whatever role you are within in digital, while it might seem so inconsequential, realize how important your time is and how much of an impact you have on others with that time. And as long as you continue, bringing that level higher, or that the level of expectation for yourself higher of what you provide to others, the better you'll be. So if there's anything, it's relationships, it's valuing others' time, and it's really turning those relationships into not only successful projects but a successful team. And yeah, I would say that's that.
Do you hear that, project managers? If you want to take away one thing from this, it's the value of your time and the fact that you get this much of it. So you want to make sure you use that well and treat the people in your life that you care about with that time. It's like the best date ever. Like, I give you my time. Isn't that lovely?
Honestly, I was talking to a project manager who relates project management to dating. I think it's an incredible thing. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think we need to think about it like that. And I break down a lot of things as dating. like if you think about dating, you think about customers and stuff, and it's kind of strange to think about a customer as you potentially dating them, but at the same time, it's still an interesting thing to reflect on because it allows you to understand how you're perceived and how your actions are perceived. And I think that's extremely important for us, especially in digital, when we don't always have the face-to-face, or we can't see, what people are doing from the, shoulders or whatever down. They could be like picking at their fingers because they're like, oh, it's so pissed off, but they could be really happy up here. So it's tough not to be able to see that. But at the same time, we need to think about it, and we need to respect people. And as long as we keep doing that, we're going to have really successful projects.
I think we are. I agree with you. So James, tell us what's a project that you guys are pretty excited about that you can talk a little bit about?
Cool. There are lots. We are if I had to pick out a couple that we're actively working on, because there's a lot that are still going on, kind of chugging behind the scenes, and we're supporting in one way or another. We have some work going on right now that we're working on some projects for NASA, which are pretty cool. Some internal sites and work for them, and some of their activities that they have going on as a team, which is fantastic. We also have one of the largest free dating sites within the United Kingdom works with us, and we've been doing some iterative work. They have a very old looking site right now. We're looking on revamping that and bringing a great experience while not taking away from their ad sales and stuff, because ultimately they're a free dating site. That's where they make their money. So a lot of balance there, which is a great one. We have an app called Shuffle right now that's in the App Store as well that we're really proud of. It allows you to create disposable numbers and emails. If you've heard of things like Burner and stuff, they're great, but they don't focus on the user's experience as much, and they don't allow you to create those numbers, and they have a different little bit of business model. And the client behind that is fantastic and really excited about what he's doing. So we carry that flag around with us wherever we go, for sure. So those are three. It's really hard, awesome. But I would say those are the three that just like kind of pop out off the top of my head right now. But there are just so many, and I would feel bad for any client who comes into this and is like, why didn't you mention my project? It's like, oh, shit.
They're all great.
They're all great. They're all fantastic.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So James, I'm going to leave us off with one last question. I want you to think about this. What do you think is a thing that you would want to convey to a project manager, digital project manager, about the things that you maybe as an owner are worrying about from day to day, to give them, like, we know PMs are intuitive, they're emotionally intelligent, but just to give them some of the intensity of like the worries that you take home and you go to bed with and you wake up with, to kind of connect them with the reality of what it is like to own the business and run the business and look after everyone.
Yeah. It's like having running a business is like having a child. If you're running it successfully and you're truly passionate about what you're doing, you can't go to sleep at night if something that is really important wasn't done, or if there's something wrong. As the owner of the company, I can feel when a project's going wrong in whatever way, and I will stay up at night because of that. Having a good project manager is the difference between me getting sleep and me not getting sleep. So I think that, and that's something I relate to our team a lot, is that concept of if I can sleep really well, it means we're doing an amazing job. But it's the times where I can't sleep, that's where we need to figure out what's going on. And every company has those things. Every owner will have those nights. But if we can look at it as being something like a child, something so important to you, so close to you, so ingrained in who you are that you feel it on a day-to-day basis. If you can think about an owner thinking about things in that basis, it can kind of allow you to support them in that way. Because ultimately, the project manager is a partner to the team and as a huge part of its success.
That's pretty beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I try.
Good job on that. That's going to be your next ad. Stars and rainbows are on that one.
Exactly.
I want to say thank you. I don't think we've been able to banter like this for a long time. The last time was probably when I was like writing bad tweets about when we hijacked your Twitter feed and we made you, I didn't even remember, but there were some things with bodily functions and stuff in there. Yeah. And I apologize for that because I think we were both younger and stupid at that point. But it was really worth it because I felt like when we got through that, we were stronger.
Together, yeah.
better. So I appreciate your candor.
I for whatever reason didn't lose any followers on that, which I think says something about my followers.
Did you
I
gain
guess
any?
I gained some and I lost some, so it actually like ended up. But I think there was something about like the Calgary Tower or the this what do they call it? I can't remember off the top of my head. But about me getting kicked out because I did something to the floors in some way. We already talked about body fluctuations. Okay, we should probably pass this point at this point and not talk about it. But yes, I lost a couple of bets on that trip, including having to swim buck naked across a river.
Bow River, probably.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I almost drowned on the way back. Thanks,
Wow.
brother. I really appreciate your
What a
help
good
on that.
guy.
Yeah, I know.
All right, James, where can people find you if they want to get in touch and learn more about how you run your business and how you look after your people?
Yeah, so the best ways are definitely to get in touch with me. It's at James Costa on Twitter. Feel free to message me with any questions that you have, and I'm happy to answer them. And you know, whether it's through Twitter, email, or whatever else, just feel free to hit me up on Twitter first, and we can figure out the best way to do that. And otherwise, to find out more about Fuse, we're fuse.ca. We spell Fuse a little strange because fusc.com was actually taken for whatever reason. So we spell it phuse.ca, and you can feel free to go there and find out a little bit about what we do and who we are and all the other awesome that we've got going on.
Right on. So I want to just throw out a giant shout out. Thank you so much for joining us again this month. Thank you so much, James, for being here and just making this really fun for me. If James actually helped us by looking at our Business of Design course that we launched about a month ago and gave us some great feedback. And I think that was part of what fostered all of this conversation. So if you do want to check out more about operations and not working in your business, but working on your business, check out the Business of Design course. And also we are about to launch another issue of our Cokes digital magazine. So check out and support our really great writers. We're not talking about project management, we're talking about life and all of the things that kind of tie us together in this world. Because like James said, you know, we only get a little bit of buckets of time and we got to spend that the right way. So thanks everybody. I hope you have a fantastic week. Look after each other. Go get some sunshine. See you later.
See you later.